In 1832, the land that would become Orlando was Seminole territory. No European settler lived within these lakes and pine woods. The United States government asked the Seminole people to leave for lands west of the Mississippi. They refused. What followed was the bloodiest of America's Indian Wars. The Second Seminole War, 7 years of small, brutal engagements across the Florida interior. The Army built 6 forts in what would become Orange County. Mellon at Lake Monroe, Lane, Christmas, Maitland, Reed, and Gatlin, the southernmost, 3 small lakes south of where Orlando now sits. The first killings came in February of 1837. Seminole warriors attacked Camp Monroe on the south shore of Lake Monroe. Captain Charles Mellon was shot dead. 14 soldiers were wounded. 3 days later, the post was renamed Fort Mellon in his honor. The settlement that grew around it became Mellonville, and later, Sanford. The last killings came 5 years later. May of 1842, a skirmish at Big Hammock on the western shore of Lake Apopka. 6 U.S. soldiers fell. The Second Seminole War was officially over. Today, those forts trace the spine of the city. Mellon became Sanford. Christmas became its own town. Maitland still bears the name. And Fort Gatlin still sits beneath modern Orlando. In the summer of 1843, a Georgia cattleman named Aaron Jernigan rolled in with his family and his herd and settled near the abandoned Fort Gatlin, the southernmost of the war's old forts, 3 small lakes south of where Orlando now stands. He was 31 years old. He was the first permanent settler in this country. His new home sat within the boundaries of Hillsborough, a vast frontier district stretching from the Gulf Coast to the Atlantic. He was terrified, and he had reason to be. It was not safe for settlers until near the end of the Third Seminole War in 1858. Through the mid-50s, a traveler riding the wagon road between Fort Mellon and Fort Gatlin counted, at most, 5 settlers along the entire route. 5 families, in a country the size of 3 modern counties. But before the boom could begin, the war came. In January of 1861, Florida seceded from the Union. The Civil War set Orlando back by nearly a decade. Mail slowed. Steamboats were seized for blockade running. Land sales froze. The young settlements held on with whatever they had. Florida was readmitted to the Union in 1868. The settlements that survived began the long climb back. Through the Reconstruction years, the country slowly rebuilt. New schools, new courthouses, new newspapers. The damage of war giving way to the hum of work. Then the Northerners began arriving in numbers, drawn by the climate, the cheap land, and the promise of citrus. Once the war ended, settlers began to trickle in. The interior was reachable by steamboat, up the St. Johns River to Sanford, and across the lakes to a new commercial landing at Lake Jesup. By the 1870s, Lake Jesup's wharves were busy with citrus, lumber, and cattle bound for the Atlantic ports. The interior had finally found its outlet to the world. These were the trunk lines, connecting Sanford and Orlando to Tampa, Jacksonville, and the Atlantic ports beyond. Beneath them, smaller branch lines stitched the county together, the Orlando, Winter Park, Oviedo Dinky Line in 1888, the Apopka, and Clay Springs in 89. Every grove, every hammock, every winter resort was now within a day of the rails. The South Florida Railroad opened regular service between Sanford and Orlando on November 11, 1880. By the end of the decade, 6 main lines fed the corridor. In 1840, the population of Orange and Seminole combined was 73. By 1870, 2,195. By 1890, 12,574. The population nearly doubled in a single decade, the railroad decade. What the rails carried, north, was oranges. By the early 1890s, Florida citrus production was climbing toward 5 million boxes a year. The trains had built an empire of fruit. Frontier trails, steam rails, expanding railways. Early automobiles. Each mode overlapped the next by about a decade, and each one changed who could live here and how. The story we are about to tell sits squarely in the second of these. The steam rail decade. The 1880s. By 1881, the trains had reached Sanford. The county was connected to the world. In 1882, life was cotton, citrus, and cattle. Work before sunrise. Church on Sunday. School when there was a teacher. By 1885, hotels rose for the winter visitors. The Magnolia. The Summerlin. The Charleston. Orlando became a stop on the road south. By 1886, the village had become a town. Orange Avenue was platted. Wooden sidewalks. Sandy roads where the wagons crunched past. Entertainment was made, not bought. Men wrestled alligators on the downtown streets for the crowds. 1898. The Spanish-American War touched Orlando. The 2nd Ohio Infantry trained on the sandy fields before shipping out to Cuba. Most of those who built this county are unnamed in any book. Some lived long enough to sit for the photographer in 1915. These are their faces. William Berry was 25 when he arrived in Apopka in 1884. He first tried his hand at growing oranges, but soon the railroad called. He became a station agent, a post he would hold for 24 years. His office was the vital link connecting Orange County's groves to the nation. Berry also helped build the town itself, serving on the council and the school board. The house he and his wife moved into in 1891 still stands as a reminder. William Blakely came to Ocoee in 1881. He brought a college education from Columbia and Carson and Newman College. Under Captain Sims, he learned the orange business from the roots up. But Blakely gave Ocoee more than just groves. He served as its principal, its postmaster, and its justice of the peace. In 1913, he did something quieter and longer lasting. He opened a room in his own home that he called the Nook. It became Ocoee's first public library, filled with his own books and magazines. Cassius Boone came from North Carolina in 1870 and grew up right alongside Orlando. He began as a teacher in the county's very first public school. He went on to manage the Lovell House, the town's only hotel, and later opened a hardware store. A true pioneer, he served as city clerk, assessor, tax collector, and mayor. In 1880, he helped found the company that purchased the land for Greenwood Cemetery. He even bred his own citrus, Boone's Early Orange, until the Great Freeze of '94 swept it away. Today, a street in downtown Orlando is named in his honor. John Neal Bradshaw arrived in Orange County in 1873. For 14 years, he served as the county's deputy clerk. He was known as the best-informed man on local politics. In 1904, he went west to Texas, becoming a successful banker and investor. But Bradshaw always said that when he got ready to really live, he would return to Orlando. He kept that promise. By 1913, he was back in business, opening the Lord and Bradshaw Agency on South Orange Avenue. John Chapman came to Orange County in 1882. He left 3 Civil War wounds and a broken leg behind him, with a chalkboard ahead. A native of Crawfordville, Georgia, he was educated at Mercer University. He taught school first in Apopka, then moved to Plymouth and planted his stake in the soil. At his peak, he ran 18 orange groves all by himself. The voters sent him to the county commission and then to the Florida legislature. A soldier, a teacher, a grower, a lawmaker. John Chapman wore every hat Orange County needed. Judge John Moses Chaney was born in 1859, a bookish boy from the Midwest. He came south to Orlando around 1886 and quickly made his mark. He brought the town electricity with his own utility company. Then he convinced the citizens to buy it from him when Orlando grew too large. A federal bench was nearly his, but politics held him back. Still, his name lives on. It marks the first paved road to the coast, Cheney Highway, and his son ensured the family's story would be told by founding the Orange County Historical Society. John Barton Clouser moved his family from Pennsylvania to Longwood in 1881. He came seeking a healthier climate for his wife, Eliza. A master carpenter, he built the Longwood Hotel when the town was just a clearing in the woods. When the Great Freeze of 1895 destroyed the citrus groves, many men left. Clouser stayed. He opened a new business with his son and served 3 terms as the town's mayor. Today, the Clouser House and Cottage, 2 homes he built, still stand in the Longwood Historic District. George White Crawford came to Conway in 1873. He was a veteran of the 5th Tennessee Infantry. Out of 1,300 men on the roll, he was one of only 30 left to surrender. He rarely spoke of the war, focusing instead on orange groves and raising stock. But his service to the community was far from over. At the age of 75, he was elected to the Florida State Senate. It is as a citizen farmer, an old book said, that he is best known. His headstone rests in the Conway United Methodist Church Cemetery. R. Edgar Dan was born in Ocoee and moved to Orlando as a boy of 14. He became the town's unofficial greeter. His transfer office on Church Street was the hinge of early tourism. Freight and travelers from the railroad passed through his hands. But Dan was more than a logistician. He talked Orlando's advantages in season and out. He showed his faith by putting every dollar he could into local property. With a jovial face and a hand always extended, strangers stepped off the train and straight into his welcome. Frank Davis was born in 1854, the son of a New Hampshire surgeon. He had the privilege to continue his studies after high school, but he was restless for the world and anxious for the business of life. In 1876, he came to the Florida frontier to join a friend. He homesteaded and cleared land for an orange grove. For years he lived in bachelor's quarters, roughing it with the other settlers. He soon picked up the tools of a surveyor, and by 1885, he had opened an office in Apopka. He didn't just sell the town. He drew its lines. James William Dillard came to Orange County in 1888. He was too busy a man to chase public office, but the voters caught him anyway. He served on the Winter Garden Town Council and later as a county commissioner. After fire destroyed the town's wooden downtown, Dillard insisted on rebuilding with brick. As a commissioner, he championed brick-paved roads for the whole county. He wanted farmers to get their produce to market on their own wheels. Today, his Dillard and Boyd building still stands as a testament to that vision. Lawrence Dollins came to Orange County in 1876. He arrived with chalk on his sleeves and teaching on his mind. He married Kelly Rushing. She died just 10 years later. He was left with 5 children to raise alone. He raised them. He kept going. He even studied law. Then, in 1887, he built the Dollins Block at Orange and Pine. It was a substantial 3-story brick building. The schoolteacher became a lawyer and then a builder. The Dollins Block still bears his name downtown. N.H. Fogg began as an electrician in Boston, back when electricity itself still felt like news. In 1884, he came to Florida and settled near the famous medicinal spring at Altamont. He traded switches for soil, but he never stopped thinking like a scientist. He experimented with everything the land would hold, from tropical plants to specialty sugar canes. He tested them all in careful rows and wrote up his findings for the Florida newspapers. A quiet innovator in the groves, reporting back to everyone. James Leroy Giles was born in Zellwood in 1863. He came to Orlando as a young clerk and opened a real estate office at age 20. By the 90s, he had brokered more land deals than any man in the city. In 1893, he built the Giles Building at Pine and Orange, Orlando's first brick business block. He served 6 terms as mayor. In January 1919, a full year before the 19th Amendment, he persuaded the city council to give Orlando women the right to vote. That same year, he renamed West Street for the Rosalind Club, Shakespeare's heroine, in the city named for her hero Orlando. Mahlon Gore was born in 1837. He made his first mark as the very first man to file for land under the Homestead Act. When he arrived in Orlando in 1880, he almost turned back. He'd traveled 1,400 miles to find what he called a cluster of a dozen buildings. But he stayed, buying the Orange County Reporter and turning it into the best news sheet in the region. That paper still runs today as the Orlando Sentinel. His home still stands. He served as the city's 13th mayor, and he is buried in Orlando's historic Greenwood Cemetery. I.W. Graves came to Ocoee in 1871 from Georgia. He was a true pioneer with a reputation for skillfully wielding a broad axe. Like many newcomers, he faced a choice for his home and fortune. He could take the easier land along the natural watercourses, or he could go farther into the wild interior of the state. Graves went for the deep scrub. Alongside Captain Sims, he turned the wilderness into a working agricultural district. This was years before the railroad ever came through. Where the scrub had been, Ocoee's groves grew up around him. James Graves was born in Crown Point in 1876. He was an original Orange County man from the very first generation. While his neighbors bet everything on citrus, Graves saw another way. In just one season, he planted 10 acres of tomatoes. He also grew a remarkable 250 acres of watermelons. His steady hand also ran the Ocoee packing house for 12 years. This foresight kept his family fed through freezes that ruined other growers. He grew up with the county, and he taught it how to hedge. The Honorable Samuel Griffin was a Floridian by birth and by choice. He claimed to be an early settler by a technicality. His parents moved to Orange County before his first birthday. He learned the timber business from the ground up. He later worked his way up to locomotive engineer on the railroad. In the state legislature, his colleagues simply called him the investigator. But his deepest roots were in the soil as a prominent orange grower. While no parks or streets bear his name, his work remains. Benjamin Luther Griffin stepped off the boat at Sanford Wharf in December of 1879. He came from the Georgia pioneer class, with old blood in him. His grandfather was General John Coffee, a close friend of Andrew Jackson himself. But this aristocrat chose the hardship of the frontier. He cut ties for the new railroad by hand, and when a train was overloaded, he put his own sturdy shoulder to the car and pushed. He had found a land with few roads and a future still to build. Elijah Hand came to Orlando from Indiana in 1885. He was the city's first trained embalmer. This new skill changed everything for grieving families. For the first time, they had precious days to gather from afar. His business was a then common pairing of furniture and undertaking. It grew so successful that he built the landmark Hand Building on Pine Street. His son, Cary, would eventually take over the family trade. Today, the newer funeral home Cary built is part of the University of Central Florida's downtown campus. Charlie Hand came to the area in 1879. He ran a livery stable when horses were still how the town moved. The locals knew him for his jovial spirit and steady hand. He served as deputy sheriff, police chief, and even mayor of Sanford. When Seminole County was born from Orange in 1913, the governor picked hand. He became its very first sheriff, a tough job in a rough time. He made the county's first recorded arrest just 4 months later. His story was recently honored at the Museum of Seminole County History. London-born W.J. Hill came to Sanford in 1873. He heard it was where English swells went to escape the cold, so he decided to become one. His first home upon arrival was a simple packing crate. He soon opened a hardware store. It sold the axes and saws a settler needed to build a life from wilderness. He survived the Great Freeze. He survived the yellow fever outbreaks that sent others packing. By the end, they called him the oldest hardware man in Florida, and he had earned every year of it. Bernhard Huppel came from Gotha, Germany to Florida in 1883. He was a trained marble cutter from a country of stone. He joined H.A. Hempel's German colony in a place they fondly called Gotha. But the Florida sand offered no outlet for his craft. So Huppel went to work for Hempel himself, in mill work and orange growing. He put down the chisel and picked up new tools for a new world. He built his life the way he built things back home, patiently and with his hands. Joseph Lewis arrived in Altamont Springs in 1881. He was a man who had already tried one American frontier, prospecting for gold in California back in 1849. In Florida, he set to work with a hammer. Altamont was a prestigious winter resort for wealthy northern families. Lewis built the Grand Altamont Hotel that hosted them, and nearly every house in the place. He also superintended the local orange groves, and owned 6 large groves of his own. A wilderness outpost became a polished town, board by board, under his hand. Frederick Augustus Luter was born in 1854 and came to Orlando in 1884. Before the law called him, life had already taught him plenty. He managed hotels, worked in a pharmacy, and opened a dry goods grocery when he arrived. All of it made him a pragmatist on the bench. As an Orange County judge, his rulings brought clarity when land titles out in the scrub were tangled beyond belief. He was a pillar of the Orlando bar, a judge who valued stability over cleverness. He is buried today in Orlando's Greenwood Cemetery. H.A. Lumsden was born in 1854 and came to Orlando in 1887. He opened a shop in the heart of the growing downtown. He never made headlines in the political battles of the day. He did something quieter, and in some ways more important. He simply kept the shelves stocked for 9 good years. Flour, nails, and coffee helped a city find its legs. After his time as a merchant, he served on the city's police force. Then he ran a livery business, becoming known as a fine judge of horses and mules. William Brigham Lynch was born in 1834. He was a scholar long before he was a pioneer. For 16 years, he was a partner in North Carolina's famous Bingham School. When his health failed, he moved south to become an orange grower. He arrived in Orange County in 1882. The major traded the parade ground for the grove, but he could not stay away from the schoolhouse. He became principal of Sanford High and was later elected county superintendent of schools. He served in that role until his death in 1911. James Bailey Magruder arrived in Orange County in 1878. He became a major citrus grower at Lake Howell. He helped bring the U.S. Department of Agriculture to Orlando to fight citrus diseases. But Magruder was more than a grower. He built the Lucerne Theater, one of Orlando's first movie houses. He also developed Jonestown, an early African-American community. He built and owned many of the homes for its residents. His legacy continued long after his death. His wife established a university loan fund in his family's name. David McGuire came to Ocoee around 1890 with his wife, both school teachers who turned to growing citrus. Then the Great Freeze of 1894 wiped out their groves. Many pioneers gave up after that cold. McGuire did not. He helped build the local packing house, teaching his neighbors how to recover, and he sent all 5 of his children to college. When Ocoee Incorporated, his son Fred became its very first mayor. Today, the long road that runs north and south through West Orange County still carries his name, McGuire Road, linking the old citrus country to the shores of Windermere. Judge William Martin came from North Carolina in 1884. He set his foot first in Apopka, then the best-known place in the county. It was the first stop for many Southern professionals. He soon moved to Orlando, joining the law office of Abrams and Bryan. There he forged a lasting friendship with Judge Bryan. In 1890, the voters made him Justice of the Peace. From that small bench, he kept climbing, becoming the county judge for over 20 years. Folks stopped calling him Mr. They started calling him Judge. Louis Conrad Massey was a Philadelphia lawyer born in 1852. He came to Orlando in 1885 and made it his home. He founded the State Bank of Orlando. Its landmark 10-story building still stands at 1 North Orange Avenue. His legal mind was so respected, the governor himself appointed him a commissioner. His task was to revise and modernize Florida's entire legal code. This is the very code that still frames the state today. In the Orlando of his time, to build such a legacy was no small thing. James Wesley Matchett was born in Eureka, Marion County, in 1863. He was a rare native Floridian in a book full of transplants. Matchett came to Pine Castle as a boy in 1874. The sourcebook says he wrestled with nature until she gave up her secrets. He marked a line around Lake Conway, built a dam, and told the lake to come no farther. After business college in Atlanta, he brought professional bookkeeping to the area's rural stores. He was a Floridian by birth and a self-taught engineer by necessity. He was the man who made the swampy south end of the county pencil out. Murray Schaefer King arrived in Orlando in 1904. He brought his wife and 7 children all the way from Pennsylvania. He was a builder who became an architect. In fact, he was the very first registered architect in the state of Florida. They gave him license number 1. King gave Orlando its signature look, from the Yowell Duckworth Building to his final masterpiece, the Orange County Courthouse. He died before it was finished, leaving his son to see it built. Today, that marble building is the Orange County Regional History Center. Murray King designed the very room where his own story is now told. Henry Nerling was born in 1853 in a Wisconsin log cabin. As a boy, he walked 3 miles to school through a forest untouched by the axe. This gave him a lifelong passion for plants. In the 1880s, the museum curator bought land in Gotha, sight unseen. His experimental garden became Palm Cottage Gardens, a global destination. Thomas Edison came to visit. So did Theodore Roosevelt. Nerling introduced over 300 new plants to Florida's landscape. Today, his home and gardens are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Arthur Bullard Newton arrived in 1892, just as the county was getting back on its feet. He and his partner ran the Newton and Howard Mercantile. It was the kind of store where a farmer could walk in for coffee and walk out with a plow. Credit was the thread that held everyone through the long months between harvests. After the Great Freeze, his honest dealings helped steady the West Orange economy. He served as the town's first mayor, earning the nickname the Godfather of Winter Garden. Today, Newton Park on Lake Apopka is named in his honor. William Robert O'Neill was an Ohioan of Virginia parentage. He came to Orlando in 1886 to manage an estate and never really left. He built an empire in insurance and real estate. He was a Republican in an all-Democratic state, yet the voters always trusted him. For 56 years, he served as a trustee for Rollins College. He even stepped in as acting president 5 separate times. When the wild 20s boom arrived, O'Neill kept his head and his ledgers clean. His home on Lake Cherokee was the first building in Orlando ever designated a historic landmark. Lewis Case Osborne came from Indiana to Zellwood on November 7, 1881. He was only a boy of 15, arriving with his father, Caleb. Together they ran the general store, a lifeline that kept the remote Grove town alive. But Osborne saw further than the next harvest. For 20 years, he served as a school trustee. He worked quietly to make sure the next generation would be educated. The Groves he minded. The children he minded more. Moses Oscar Overstreet was born in Georgia in 1866. He came to Orange County in the 1880s, starting in the old southern trades of turpentine and naval stores. His business grew to include the Overstreet Crate Company, supplying boxes for the entire citrus industry. In 1927, he donated the land that became Big Tree Park. This saved a colossal bald cypress, 3,500 years old. The locals gratefully named the tree the Senator in his honor. The ancient tree was lost to fire in 2012. Today, a clone called the Phoenix grows in its place. Helen Augusta Rollins was born in Salem, Michigan, in 1833. She and her husband moved to Orlando in 1886. When he died nearly 20 years later, Helen was 70 years old. But she did something most widows of her era could not. She kept going. She ran their business selling a patented cover to protect citrus trees from frost. She then plowed the profits into Orlando real estate. Deal by deal, she helped shape the residential character of the growing city. Her portrait appears in a 1915 book on Orange County's pioneers, a tribute to her remarkable energy. James Howard Sadler was born in South Carolina on April 21, 1859. His father died in the Civil War. In 1865, his widowed mother brought her children to her father's land in Florida. That grandfather was James Spear, the man credited with naming Orlando itself. The boy grew into a titan of the West Orange citrus industry. He was the first in the area to irrigate his fields. Sadler helped found the town of Oakland and promoted the Orange Belt Railway. In 1912, he also co-founded the Bank of Oakland. Today, that historic building serves as the Oakland Town Hall. Elizabeth Saunders Massey came to Orange County in 1885. The widow from Canada was seeking a healthier climate for her son. Her home overlooked 3 lakes known as Faith, Hope, and Charity. When the counties split in 1913, her property lay so close to the boundary that her fence nearly served as the map. In a time of new boundaries and factions, she played no favorite. She was a bridge between Sanford and Orlando, and both sides counted her as one of their own. The land she settled would one day become the famous attraction San Lando Springs. John Neal Searcy came to Longwood in 1873, arriving by steamer at Mellonville. He was a veteran of the Civil War. He kept his Confederate parole framed over the mantel, a priceless souvenir. A merchant by trade and a pioneer by disposition, he brought the young town something it did not yet have. He brought permanence. He helped build Christ Episcopal Church from local heart pine and cypress. The small white church still stands, quiet among the live oaks. Today, a building at the church, Searcy Hall, is named in his honor. Dr. Eugene Oscar Sims was a true native son of Orange County. He was born in Ocoee on June 11, 1867. His father, Captain Bluford Sims, founded the nation's first commercial citrus nursery right there in town. Eugene went north for his training and graduated from the Baltimore College of Dentistry in 1890. The world was before him to choose a place to practice. But he chose to come home. His return brought essential, specialized care to the growing community. Today, a main corridor through downtown Ocoee is Blueford Avenue, named for his father. J. Walter Sims was a true Orange County boy, born in Ocoee in 1867. He grew up amid his father's famous citrus nurseries and the native Florida woods. But studying a map of the nation made him feel a bit too cramped. He decided to emigrate west to see the country for himself. He found it wild and woolly. It was not at all in keeping with good old Orange County. He soon returned home, becoming a dentist after his travels. The Sims family name is remembered today on Ocoee's Blueford Avenue. William Smith was born near Belfast, Ireland, on April 13, 1855. His mother died when he was just an infant. His father brought him to America to grow into manhood. He arrived in Orlando in 1886 as a teacher. Smith brought an Irish-American steadiness to his work. He helped build the fraternal orders that served as early social safety nets. His name appears again and again in early school board records. He standardized the curriculum and steadied the classrooms. Smith made sure the children of a boom town were actually taught. He was a foundational teacher in a city that needed one. James Gamble Spear was born in South Carolina on June 23, 1820. He came to Florida in 1854, a man known as a staunch defender of the right. After winning a contentious fight to make his settlement the county seat, the question of a name arose. It was Judge Spear who stood up and suggested Orlando. Whether for a fallen soldier or a Shakespearean prince, the name came from his pen. He also founded the town of Oakland, where a park and an avenue still bear his name. Albert Alonzo Stone was born in Killingworth, Connecticut on August 24, 1829. For more than 20 years, he captained a fishing crew off the New England coast. In winter, he acquired ship timber from the frozen forests. He brought that tireless work ethic south to Maitland in 1883. A fisherman's eye for weather and tides served him well in the citrus groves. His stone grove outlasted both disease and depression. He simply refused, season after season, to let it go. Today, Albert Alonzo Stone rests in the Maitland Cemetery. Loyal Lozelle Stone came from Connecticut to Maitland in 1883 with his father. They ran their citrus business together as A. Stone and Son. When the Great Freeze of '94 hit, their grove was the first to recover. Stone used advanced budding techniques his neighbors had never seen. He became Maitland's unofficial consultant, walking families through the patient work of saving their groves. He even provided them with his own fine-budded trees to help them restart. He proved what the right technique could do with the right will. He helped the orange come back to Orange County. Edward Malton Strong came to Apopka in 1881 from Virginia and Georgia. An old book noted these two states sent Orange County its most determined settlers. Strong had first planned a homestead along the St. Johns River, but the Apopka Highlands pulled him inland. There he cleared pine flats that many said would never grow citrus. He proved them wrong with careful irrigation. This determined man was a carpenter and an orange grower. And for a time, he was also the town marshal. Dexter Thompson was born in Massachusetts in 1859. He came to Orange County in 1881 and settled in Sanford. His timing was perfect. He arrived just as the new railroad met the steamboats of the St. Johns River. Thompson saw a bustling gateway to a new frontier and knew it would need lumber. From this modest beginning, his business grew to include mills across Central Florida. He became president of the Warnell Lumber Company and made his home on Lucerne Circle. When his health failed, he sought relief in New Mexico, where he died in 1907. Tyrannus Jefferson Minor arrived in Ocoee in 1892 from Gwinnett County, Georgia. He and his brother Americus soon opened a store that became the town's living room. It was the crossroads where neighbors met and deals were made. In 1909, he found a partner in David McGuire. Together, they built the Ocoee Citrus Exchange Packing House. This venture gave small growers the collective power to compete with northern shipping giants. Their friendship was a cornerstone of Ocoee's future, built on the simple idea of cooperation. Thomas Picton Worlow was born in India in 1865, the son of a British colonel. Educated in France and Switzerland, he was the most cosmopolitan man to settle the Orange County scrub. He came to Orlando in 1884 and formed the influential law firm of Massey and Worlow. He also became a founding shareholder of the Orlando Orange Groves Company. He served with distinction as a county judge for many years. His home, the Worlow House, remains on the National Register of Historic Places. Today, descendants of Judge Worlow are still influential in the Orlando community. Henry Holly Witherington arrived in Apopka from Alabama in 1883. He started as a clerk in a grocery store and later built his own mercantile business. But in 1901, he did something that broke the quiet of the Florida scrub forever. He and a partner built the first rural telephone line in Orange County. They strung wire between Apopka and Clay Springs, now part of Waukewa Springs. For the first time, isolated communities could speak across the miles in an instant. A house he built in 1887 from virgin yellow pine is now a stop on the Apopka Historical Trail. Frank Lee Woodruff was a native son of Orange County, born near Sanford at Fort Reed. He came of age when the town was all First Street mud and a cool lake breeze. A banker and real estate man, he also served Sanford as its mayor for 3 terms. When Seminole County was created in 1913, the governor appointed him to its first commission. His peers immediately elected him chairman, building a new government from the ground up. The Garner-Woodruff Building, which he co-developed in 1910, still stands on East First Street. Elias Woodruff was born in New Jersey in 1785. He served under Andrew Jackson in the War of 1812. An adventurous spirit brought him to the Florida frontier at the age of 59. He arrived in 1844, settling near Fort Reed to plant one of the first orange groves. He was an old man when Florida became a state, older still when the Civil War came. The grove outlived him. His son, William, later stood for Orange County at the Secession Convention. In a moment of high conviction, he voted no. Seth Woodruff was born at Fort Reed on March 10, 1862. We know the place today as Sanford. He was the oldest of the 3rd generation of Orange County Woodruffs. In 1877, he rode north to Erskine College in South Carolina. They offered a 6-year course of study. He finished it in 5, graduating with honors in every subject. He came home a scholar among the orange trees, using his education to modernize the family groves. But his health began to fail. He traveled to New Mexico seeking a cure and passed away there in 1907. William Washington Woodruff rode down from Mississippi in 1848. He was just a boy of 16 when he first tried the difficult horseback journey. He later fought in the Third Seminole War, patrolling the wild interior. In 1860, he married Nanny Galloway from a nearby pioneer family. When secession came, Woodruff was one of only 7 men in all of Florida to vote against it. He was a Unionist. But when war came, he served in the local Home Guard, standing with his neighbors. Willis Lucullus Palmer was a lawyer from Georgia who took the helm as mayor of Orlando. He served from 1891 to 1893. Under his leadership, the city built its iconic red brick courthouse. He also oversaw the purchase of land that would become Greenwood Cemetery. His time in office, however, was on the cusp of disaster. The Great Freeze of 1894 arrived just after he left office. It wiped out the citrus industry and tested the pioneers for a decade. Today, Willis Palmer rests in Greenwood, the very cemetery he helped establish for the city. William Henry Jewell arrived in Florida in the year 1886. He was a decorated veteran of the American Civil War. His honorary title of general came from serving on a Confederate staff. But in his new home of Orlando, Jewell became a man of peace. He quickly earned the deep trust of his fellow citizens. They elected him to serve 3 full terms as the city's mayor. He began his service in the year 1907. This former soldier had become a forward-looking civic leader. Today, General Jewell rests in Orlando's historic Greenwood Cemetery. Judge James Beggs was a key figure in early Orlando's legal world. He served as the city attorney in 1883, but his greatest mark was in finance. He helped organize the Orlando Bank and Trust Company. It opened on April 17, 1906, with Judge Beggs as its first president. His leadership was a cornerstone of the community's future prosperity. He held the position until his death. For many years, a downtown street carried his name, Beggs Avenue. Today, it is known as FAMU Law Lane. Louis Cass Horn was born in Marshall, Mississippi, in 1848, with family roots reaching back to Hertford County, North Carolina. He took his early education at Elm Grove and Buckhorn Academies, those quiet North Carolina schools, and like many Southern men of his generation, he carried the title captain home from the Civil War. He was barely 17 when the fighting ended. By the time he settled into Orange County, his commission had become his name. The 1915 history book remembered him simply as one of the old worthies, a professional and political man of standing in the early county. He died in 1903. Judge Cecil Butt was the son of Dr. James Nixon Butt, a pioneer physician of Orlando, and the link between 3 generations of the Butt family in the city. He presided over the criminal court through the formative 1890s, raised his family with his wife Kate McDowell, and was remembered alongside Mayor Giles and Captain Horn as one of Orange County's old worthies. His son became a respected Orlando dentist. His granddaughter, Grace the Ace, Butt, would grow up to fly daring air shows for cheering crowds. The family gave its name to a downtown lake. Modern-day Lake Sawyer was lake, but on county maps for decades. Cecil is buried at Greenwood Cemetery. Will Wallace Harney came to Florida in 1869. He sought a warmer climate for his ailing wife, Mary. Tragically, she died just weeks after they arrived, leaving him alone with their infant son. Rather than return north, Harney stayed. He built a home from tall Florida pines and called it his Pine Castle. From there, he wrote articles for national newspapers, praising the region's beauty and potential. His powerful words acted like a one-man chamber of commerce. The community that grew up around his property still bears the name he gave it, Pine Castle. James Huey arrived in Orange County from Georgia in 1855. He brought his family and all their household effects in a single 2-wheeled cart. He found a spot on the west bank of Lake Lucerne and unloaded his family. But his first act was not to build a shelter for them. Instead, he immediately enlisted to serve in the ongoing Seminole War. Only after his service did he establish his 160-acre homestead. Today, his name is worthily perpetuated on Huey Avenue in downtown Orlando. Dr. James Nixon Butt was born in 1831 and educated in France and Switzerland, a frontier physician with continental medical training. He arrived in Orlando in 1884 and opened his practice downtown, joining the small circle of professional men remembered as Orange County's Old Worthies. His son Arthur served as the county's tax assessor for 30 years, and the family home on Lake Jessamine still stands at the heart of Cypress Grove Park. For decades, county maps labeled the lake nearby as Lake, but quietly renamed Lake Sawyer in modern times. Dr. But died in 1903 and is buried at Greenwood Cemetery, alongside Jacob Summerlin and Mayor Giles. Hiram Beasley came to Orange County sometime after the Civil War. He became the steadfast bailiff for the county's first official courthouse. In 1875, he bought the old courthouse building itself. He paid $611.50. He then had it moved to the very spot where the Angebilt Hotel would one day stand. Beasley served that court for over 37 years. His wage was $1 a day. He once refused a 50-cent raise. He worried it might attract competition for the job he loved. Hiram Beasley is buried today in Orange County's Lake Hill Cemetery. Buford Marion Sims was a Tennessean who served through the Civil War. He came to Florida in 1865 and found a vast Orange County. It had just 75 voters and no railroad closer than Jacksonville. Sims taught the county's first school and built its first frame courthouse. But his true genius was with citrus. On Lake Apopka, he cut down wild orange trees. Then he grafted sweet buds directly onto the wild stumps. This clever trick created one of the first commercial citrus nurseries in the United States. Today, the land he farmed is downtown Ocoee, and Blueford Avenue is named for him. Arthur Spear arrived in Orange County in 1854. He was only 2 years old when his family settled the vast wilderness. One of his earliest memories was watching the final departure of the area's Native Americans. As a young man, he carved his own homestead from the wild land near Oakland. He established an orange grove and later built the community's very first store. For a quarter of a century, he served as a trusted justice of the peace. Today, Spear Avenue in Oakland honors the legacy of his pioneer family. Dr. Washington Kilmer was a physician with incredible resilience. In 1872, his doctors in Ohio gave him just 1 year to live. So he walked to Florida, a journey of over 1,400 miles. The climate fully restored his health. He settled here, named the community of Altamont, and helped establish the county school system. When a yellow fever epidemic struck Tampa, he was the only local doctor to volunteer, treating the sick for weeks. Today, Washington Street in downtown Orlando is named for this remarkable pioneer. Luther Fuller Tilden came to Florida in 1875. His doctor in Illinois had a simple prescription for his bronchitis. Go south. Tilden settled near Lake Apopka and became a highly successful grower. He was known for his innovative packing and crating methods. Local merchants quickly learned a valuable lesson. A crate marked with Tilden's initials meant the finest produce was inside. He generously donated land for both a church and a school. Today, Tildenville Elementary School honors the pioneer who came to Florida looking for warmer weather. Charles Hoffner came to Orlando around 1889. He quickly found success in the citrus business. At his peak, he owned a flourishing 60-acre orange grove. He even sold a portion of his land for $30,000. Hoffner also served as a director for a local bank. Then came the Big Freeze of 1893. The disaster completely wiped out his groves. It also caused the bank to fail, costing him his entire fortune. Yet his name endures. In 1912, he allowed a road to be cut through his homestead. That road is now known as Hoffner Avenue. S.J. T. Segar made his way from Georgia to Orange County in 1884. He began his new life working in the local sawmilling industry. But after just 4 years, he made a significant change. Seagar traded the sawmill for the soil, becoming a farmer in the Ocoee area. He proved to be a natural grower of fruits and vegetables. He came to own 2 productive orange groves. He also cultivated a remarkable 30 acres of vegetables. In the thrifty Ocoee community, he and his wife raised their family of 6 children. William Benjamin Hull arrived in Orange County on Christmas Day, 1855. He and his wife Emily traveled from Cobb County, Georgia. During the Civil War, Hull served in the Confederate Army. He was wounded 2 times and captured at the Battle of Gettysburg. He was imprisoned at Fort Delaware until the war finally ended. Upon his release, a boat took him as far as Palatka. From there, he walked the final long miles home to Orlando. Today, Hull Avenue in Oakland honors the pioneer Hull family. Earl Wayne Ewing came to Winter Garden seeking a cure. The young man from Ohio hoped Florida's warmth would help a rheumatic condition. His brother Ben even moved with him to help with his care. Despite his health, Earl opened a real estate business downtown. He married Willie Mae Connell, and they soon welcomed a son. But his time in the sunshine was tragically short. Earl passed away in 1913 at just 25 years old. His father later platted land in his memory, where the First Baptist Church now stands. Joseph Barber was born right here in Orange County in 1860. His family's home was on the southern shores of Lake Conway. His life unfolded against the backdrop of the violent Barber-Mizell feud. This was a decades-long conflict between 2 powerful cattle ranching clans. The lawless era was defined by shootouts and revenge killings. In one grim story, a relative was drowned in Lake Conway. The man was allegedly weighed down with an iron plowshare. Amidst this turmoil, Joseph became the father of 11 children. He helped establish his family as pioneers in the region's cattle and citrus industries. Andrew Barber came to Orange County as a teenager in 1855. He was only 16 years old when his family settled near the shores of Lake Conway. He carried a vivid memory from his childhood during the Civil War. He recalled watching his mother perform an incredible task. She took raw cotton from the field and made all the family's clothing by hand. As an adult, Barber's name became linked to a darker chapter in local history. His family was deeply involved in the notorious Barber-Mizell feud during Reconstruction. Captain Jonathan Clay Stewart arrived in Orange County way back in 1854. He chose to settle at a beautiful spot known then as Clay Spring. Today, thousands of people know this place as the popular Wekiwa Springs. But his first year, there was a rugged introduction to the Florida frontier. He spent that time living completely alone among the area's wild beasts. Early accounts list his neighbors as wolves, bears, panthers, and wildcats. After a year of this wild company, he moved to a new homestead, leaving a vivid picture of a truly untamed Florida. R.P. Jerome arrived in Orange County in 1886. He was a veteran of the Civil War, having served the Confederacy for the full 4 years. After the war, he ran a mercantile business in his home state of Georgia. But at the age of 46, he chose a new life in Florida as an orange grower. He tended his groves until his death in 1913 at the good old age of 73. His 2 sons, H. Jerome and his brother, carried on the family's work in the orange business. Clementine Virginia Caldwell arrived in Orlando from Pennsylvania in 1887. Though a physician by trade, she took over the prominent Summerlin Hotel on Lake Eola. For more than 25 years, she made it a beloved resort for visitors. Her hotel also became the unofficial headquarters for Orlando's political movers and shakers. It was said that if the dining room walls could talk, they could tell many a story. The doctor from Pennsylvania had skillfully created the social heart of a growing city. Mary Kerr Duke arrived in Orlando in 1875. She was a respected educator and a prominent businesswoman. Many early residents knew her boarding house, Duke Hall. Her influence, however, reached far beyond Orange County. In 1893, she journeyed to the Chicago World's Fair. There, she served as the only female judge for the horticulture exhibit. This was a remarkable honor for a woman of her time. Her daughter Hallie later ran Duke Hall, keeping her mother's esteemed name in the community. In 1883, a wave of English investment swept into Orlando, and at its crest was Gordon Rogers. More than just a gentleman with capital, Rogers was a visionary builder. He directed banks and foundries, seeing potential where others saw only sand and swamp. He established the exclusive English Club, a social hub for his fellow countrymen seeking fortune in the Florida sunshine. But his most enduring mark was made in brick and mortar, financing a grand three-story landmark that would forever bear his name. Today, the magnificent Rogers Building still stands proudly at the corner of Magnolia and Pine. He wasn't your typical Florida pioneer. General Henry Sanford was a worldly diplomat, a man who walked the halls of European power. But in 1870, he saw a different kind of future in the sandy soil of Orange County. He bought over 23 square miles of land and created his famous Bel Air Groves, a vast experimental garden for citrus. While others planted what they knew, Sanford introduced the sweet Valencia orange, forever changing Florida's signature crop. He envisioned a bustling gate city to South Florida, a dream that took root and grew into the city that still bears his name today. In 1881, with Florida facing bankruptcy, a Philadelphia saw tycoon named Hamilton Diston made a world-changing deal. He purchased 4 million acres of swampland for $1 million, a sale that rescued the state's finances overnight. From his headquarters in Kissimmee, he launched an ambitious plan to drain the wilderness. His dredges lowered East Lake to Hopecalaga, draining ground that had been swamp for 10,000 years. The dry land that emerged became the city of St. Cloud. Every street, every house today stands on land Diston pulled out of the water. He died in 1896, his fortunes undone by the Panic of '93. But the dry land remained. Jacob Summerlin was born in 1820, the first American child born in Florida after Spain handed it over. By his 40s, he was the wealthiest man in the state, the king of the crackers, a cattle baron who knew every hammock from the Everglades to the Georgia line. When Orange County's seat threatened to slip from Orlando to Sanford in 1875, he offered $10,000 for a new courthouse. The seat stayed. 8 years later, he donated the land around a clear downtown lake to be a public park forever. Today, Summerlin Avenue threads through downtown, and the lake he gave is still its jewel. Before railroads pushed south, the St. Johns River was the only highway into Central Florida, and Captain Jacob Brock was its master. Starting in the 1850s, his steamboats, like the famous Darlington and Hattie, were the lifeblood connecting the wilderness to the world. He established the first regular line to Enterprise, the county seat, and built the Grand Brock House Hotel, a beacon for travelers and would-be settlers. Though he passed before 1880, his river route and famous hotel were the very gateway through which the next wave of Orange County pioneers would arrive, seeking their fortunes. While he made his fortune bringing Mumm's champagne to America's elite, Frederick de Barry found his passion on the wild St. Johns River. In the 1870s, he launched the DeBary Merchants Line, revolutionizing travel for Orange County's pioneers. His flagship, the city of Jacksonville, wasn't just a boat. It was a floating palace with glass windows and private staterooms, a stark contrast to the rugged frontier. DeBary connected the isolated interior to the wider world, carrying not just citrus and supplies, but a vision of luxury and progress. His grand winter home, DeBary Hall, still stands as a testament to the elegant world he built. Imagine a Russian aristocrat, a former captain in the Imperial Guard, trading the palaces of St. Petersburg for the pine forests of Florida. That was Pyotr Dmitriev, who became Peter Dements. Arriving in 1881, he first ran a sawmill. But his vision was grander. In 1886, he took over a failing railroad charter and forged the Orange Belt Railway, a narrow-gauge line stretching from Sanford through Oakland, all the way to the Gulf. Despite constant financial peril, he pushed the line to its terminus. In a coin toss, he won the right to name the new town, christening it St. Petersburg after his beloved childhood home. Not every pioneer arrived in a dusty wagon. Some, like Alexander St. Clair Abrams, came armed with a law degree and a grand vision. A brilliant but combative attorney, he saw Central Florida not as a wilderness, but as a blank page for his ambitions. In 1883, he chartered a railroad to connect Orlando to his new boomtown of Tavares. He dreamed of state capitals and southern resorts, using his sharp legal mind and even sharper tongue to bend the future to his will. He was a man who built with words in the courtroom and with iron rails through the pine forests. Imagine leaving the cold of Chicago for the wild Florida frontier, not to rough it, but to build a paradise. That was Loring Chase's dream. In 1881, he and his partner Oliver Chapman bought 600 acres of land nestled between three lakes. Chase wasn't just selling plots. He was selling a sophisticated vision. He meticulously laid out a town of wide avenues, beautiful parks, and a prime spot for a new college. He envisioned a winter resort for the wealthy and cultured, a stark contrast to the rugged settlements nearby. Today, when you walk the tree-lined streets of Winter Park, you are walking through the very dream Loring Chase mapped out on paper. After a storied military career, General William Temple Withers sought a new kingdom, not of battle, but of sunshine and citrus. Arriving in Ocoee around 1886, he didn't just plant trees, he planted a community. Withers poured his fortune into thousands of acres of orange groves, becoming a titan of the burgeoning industry. His grand home, built in 1888, was a testament to his success and a social hub for the growing town. It was a bold vision of a citrus empire, one whose architectural heart still beats today in the center of Ocoee. In the heart of post-Reconstruction Florida, a powerful voice emerged from Winter Park. Gustavus Henderson, a self-educated man with a fierce belief in justice, saw the future taking shape. In 1887, as the town debated its official borders, Henderson rallied his neighbors in the Hannibal Square community. He ensured their votes were counted, bringing their homes and families inside the new town limits. 2 years later, he gave that community its own voice, founding the Winter Park Advocate, the city's very first African-American newspaper. His advocacy shaped the very map of the city we see today. The pioneers are gone. The groves they planted are mostly gone too, but their names remain. On streets, on lakes, on the county itself. They built Orange County out of pine woods and pure stubbornness, and we are still walking through what they built. And these whose faces did not survive, also built this place. Aaron Jernigan, Edward Hank, Francis Knowles, Oliver Chapman, Charles Mellon, Isaac Newton, the two Joneses, Sam and Penny, Milo Cooper, Columbus Boger, Samuel Robinson, William Roper, William Patrick, the doctors, McEwen, Haskell, Bishop, James Harris, Major Allen. They built it. We built this for them.